Welcome to the City Council regular meeting this Tuesday evening on January 3rd. I now call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Thank you.
With pleasure, Mayor. Councilmember Hedges.
Here.
Councilmember Lorraine.
Here.
Councilmember Newsom.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Diaz-Nash.
Here.
Mayor Lee.
Here.
Thank you.
We are excited to be here in person with options for those who choose not to be in person to participate virtually. There are several ways to participate. For those attending in person, complete a yellow request slip and hand it to our city clerk. If participating remotely, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and you will be called at the appropriate time. If calling on via phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close public comment period. Madam Clerk, will you please read the consent calendar?
With pleasure, Mayor. Before I go into that, I do see that on our Zoom call, there's a hand raised. Please wait until we call your item to raise your hand. Otherwise, I won't know when to call on you. So if you can lower your hand right now until we come to the item you're interested in speaking on, that would be really helpful. Thank you. So for the consent calendar, all matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion without discussion. If discussion is desired, that item may be removed and considered separately. Item number 1, Police Records Supervisor Job Specification Update. Item number 2, Beresford Park Batting Cage, Ball Fields, and Concession Building Use Agreement. Item number 3, Trinta Park Batting Cage, Ball Fields, and Concession Building Use Agreement. Item number 4, Siberian Elm and Sycamore Tree Pruning Project Agreement. And item number 5, utility trucks purchase contract has asked to be considered separately. So at this time, we're asking for consideration of items 1 through 4.
Is there any member of the council who would like to pull an item from the consent calendar? No. Is there any member of the public wishing to comment on the consent calendar item? This would be the time to make your comment. This is for the consent calendar items only.
Yeah, 1 through 4.
Great.
I have one hand still raised. Ms. Backman, Sandy Backman, are you intending to comment on consent calendar?
Hello?
Hello, are you intending to comment on consent calendar? Hello? Okay, at this time I'm going to lower that hand. Thank you.
Is there a motion on the floor?
I would move to approve items 1 through 4 on the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
A second.
Madam Clerk, will you please call?
Councilmember Hedges.
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom.
Yes.
Councilmember Lorraine.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Nash.
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, so we'll turn our attention to item number 5, utility truck purchase contract. Do we have any public commenters wishing to speak on this item?
I have one public commenter, Robert Whitehair. Please come forward.
First of all, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here, and Happy New Year. I hope we have a productive and collaborative year. I thank you for taking it off the consent calendar. San Mateo is to be congratulated for having a well-maintained fleet of utility trucks. They're available for some of the tough, difficult work in the field. Thank you for setting aside each year enough money to create vehicle reserve funds so that every vehicle can be replaced when needed. The issue SAMCAT, San Mateo Climate Action Team, has with buying 3 F-350 large trucks is not the cost at about $100,000 each. This seems reasonable given the special nature of those trucks. I think some of you know that I have experience with some of those vehicles. What I see missing in the staff report is specific, detailed information about what electric alternatives were considered. The City Council very wisely adopted a decarbonization objective for 2030, which is a mere 7 years from now. Failure to consider electric vehicle alternatives is a lost opportunity. Once you spend that $300,000, it's gone for 15 years. The 3 vehicles being considered tonight should last at least 14 or 15 years, long after 2030. San Mateo does have an excellent record of maintenance programs. Delaying purchase for a month or two does not put the city at risk. I'm asking you that you please direct staff to come back with an analysis of electric alternatives. I know this will take some work because it's going to take a pretty big electric vehicle, but I know they're out there. Thank you.
Thank you. In the Zoom, I have a hand raised from Michelle Brown. Michelle, if you intend to talk under item number 5, the utility truck purchase, if you could please keep your hand up. If you don't intend to talk on this item, please lower your hand. And same for Sandy Backman. Thank you. We have no other public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Would any council members care to comment or have any additional questions? Councilmember Hedges?
I'd like to know, based on the public comment we heard, if either the city manager or Azalea Mitch with Public Works would like to comment on why it's necessary now to have these type of trucks and whether we actually did consider electrified vehicles.
Hi, good evening, council members. Azalea Mitch, Public Works Director. Indeed, every time we aim to replace vehicles every 10 years. For our police department, it is every 5 years. And every time there's a vehicle up for replacement, we evaluate what is available on the market. We have been transitioning to, a few years ago, as you all know, we have 20 vehicles that run on compressed natural gas. We have electric vehicles, 14 of them, and we also have hybrid. So we evaluate market availability. We are currently in the process. We ordered an F-150 that's all electric. In terms of trucks of the size of F-350s, there are no electric alternatives available. So that you're aware of the process, we do evaluate, we work with our supplier, and we actually also work with our contract fleet maintenance to evaluate market availability. So we are in the process of transitioning. We're also in the process of evaluating our charging needs based on how we use our vehicles and how many miles we run on them on a daily basis. So we actually have a group of folks working on the infrastructure piece as we evaluate the replacement of vehicles as they come up for that replacement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Councilmember Lorraine?
Thank you. I would just like to make a comment. I would like to thank Azalea for the clarification. But perhaps in a future item like this, would it be possible to include a bit of language explaining that? Because I know even I myself had a similar concern and question.
Absolutely, and that's something that we can definitely expand on, the fact that we are going through this process every time. So yes, we'll do so on the next purchase.
Thank you.
Great. And one last question from me. It does run, in fact, on biodiesel, is that right?
Correct. So when there isn't an electric version available, we're actually evaluating whether we can purchase a diesel option, because now all the diesel that we purchase is renewable. That means it comes from a renewable source. So the footprint is much, much lower than fossil-based.
Thank you. And with that, is there a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Lorraine?
Yes.
Councilmember Hedges?
Yes.
Councilmember Newsome?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Diaz-Nash?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Let's see, where are we? Okay. Next on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public who wishing to comment on any item not appearing on the agenda may address the City Council at this time. State law prevents council from taking action on any matter not on the agenda. Your comments may be referred to staff for follow-up. This public comment section is generally limited to a total of 15 minutes. However, that is subject to council's discretion and can be extended if council wishes to do so. If needed, an opportunity for additional public comment may also be provided later in the agenda. My understanding is a lot of people here today are interested in speaking on the storm and flooding, and that will be addressed at a later agenda item. So this is for non-agendized items. Do we have any public comment?
Yes, at this time, I have one hand raised in the Zoom call. Everyone else that I have here is for item number 6. So right now, Sandy Backman, if this is for public comment for items not on the agenda, if you're wanting to comment around the weather event we had over the weekend and impacts from that, that will be under the next item, which is item number 6. So please leave your hand up if you want to comment on a public comment for items not on the agenda. Otherwise, if you could lower your hand until we call for that item. Okay.
Yeah, hi. Oh, go ahead. Hi, my name is Sandy Backman. I'm the president of Barbertown Homeowners Association, and I was a little confused on what you just said. We can talk about the lagoon issue, or we cannot at this time?
Mr. Bachman, it sounds like you are interested in speaking on item number 6. And so why don't you reserve your comments until we open that item?
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have no speakers.
With that, we'll close public comment. Oh,
you want public comment? Yes. Okay.
Sorry. I'll try to make this quick. I'm sure most people want to get to more serious issues, but mine's pretty serious. This is more directed to Mr. Lorraine. We had talked the day you were elected, and I asked you about the issues we have with the traffic problems on near and around the Hillsdale High School and some of the other projects that have been done. I think Ms. Lee has probably seen me here a couple of times trying to get this stuff done. I was head of the traffic committee that was put together many years ago. And I've talked to Public Works, not getting a lot of response from them. So if I could get you, at the time you said you weren't able to really get together. It's been a couple of weeks. So I was wondering if we could set a schedule up to take a look at the area and possibly if we could maybe get somebody from Public Works to join us to try to resolve these issues that have been lingering for several years. I'd appreciate that. And secondly, I just would like to extend a welcome to the, I'm also board member of the Beresford Hillsdale we call it Neighborhood Association. And I know that you were quite busy this coming, but I would like to feel as if you could attend the meetings that we have. We'll give you plenty of head notice to attend the meetings that we have coming up to discuss different things that we have issues with in our area. So thank you for your time.
sounds like a great offer. Okay, well, let's move on to item number 6, new item, addition to the agenda, subject to council approval. Ratification of proclamation of a local emergency. I believe we have a presentation from our city manager, Mr. Drew Corbett.
I think we'll start through the mayor. We'll start with the city attorney to get this item approved for the agenda.
Correct. So what I recommend that the city council do first is, under the Brown Act, the council is allowed to add items to an agenda after the agenda is posted under very limited circumstances. This is one of those circumstances where something came to the attention of the council after the agenda was posted, but it requires a 2/3 vote of the council. And that is one of the 2 resolutions that is in the council packet. So at this time, in order to add this item to the agenda, I recommend that the council adopt that resolution, which would then be followed by the city manager's presentation and then public comment.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
My motion is to add the ratification of proclamation of a local emergency to our agenda.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
I'm sorry, who is the second? Thank you. Councilmember Hedges.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Nash.
Yes.
Councilmember Lorraine.
Yes.
Councilmember Newsome.
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Wonderful. And Mr. Corbett? Thank you, Madam Clerk. You're getting in your 10,000 steps.
Thank you, Patrice. Good evening, Mayor Lee, members of the City Council. Drew Corbett, City Manager. The item before you is a declaration of local emergency. Next slide, please. So by way of background, obviously we had a significant wet weather event last Saturday. We're expecting much more rain in the coming, not just the next few days, but the next week based on existing forecasts. This has resulted in significant flooding throughout the city and a number of other operational impacts. The municipal code, section 2.78.030A, allows for the Director of Emergency Services, which is me as the city manager, to declare a local emergency, which I did effective January 31st. December, excuse me. Next slide, please. So what a local emergency proclamation does, what it provides for is it provides for much greater operational flexibility for the way we deploy our resources citywide. All of our employees are disaster services workers, so it provides better authority for us to utilize folks as we need them to address the emergency conditions. It provides greater access to regional resources. I believe the county this afternoon passed their own emergency, and we are awaiting the state to declare this area an emergency as well. And doing this provides better for potential reimbursement for emergency response costs, as well as potential grants for any sort of damage repair. So that is the impact of the emergency declaration. So moving on into preparation for the upcoming storms. On the next slide, I wanted to highlight a few of the things that we're doing to get ready. We're clearing all of our stormwater catch basins and trash racks. We've been mapping flood-prone areas for potential road closures and detours, and we've been trying to get things staged in certain areas so we can deploy quickly. We've been testing our pump stations and planning for all of our other operational needs. We've lowered the Marina Lagoon to below standard winter levels. We've been maintaining a sandbag station at the courtyard. We also opened one up at Seal Point Park today. The sand there, I'm learning, is already gone as of tonight. We do have pickups planned for tomorrow to replenish the sand at both the courtyard and at Seal Point Park. We've been mobilizing and deploying all of our available resources. We are going to close City Hall and recreation centers tomorrow at noon in preparation. Based on what we learned this morning from the National Weather Service, the heavy rain is supposed to start at about 3 o'clock tomorrow and last for about 12 hours. It is important to note, at this point, we are not going to close the after-school programs, nor the senior lunch program at this time. We are going to continue to provide those tomorrow, but all other sort of non-essential recreation activities are going to be canceled for tomorrow. And we're coordinating with the county and our other neighboring cities, and we are activating our Emergency Operations Center as of 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, and that will be a 24-hour a day activation through Thursday at 6 p.m. with extensions possible pending the weather. And so the action I'm looking for tonight is to confirm my declaration of local emergency, and this declaration will be rescinded as soon as emergency conditions subside. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have questions on the floor, or would we like to first hear public comment? Public comment? Okay, so we would like to open it up to public comment. Madam Clerk, if you could please take a tally of how many people we have interested.
Yes, Madam Mayor. At this time, I have 15 in-person speaker slips, and if on the Zoom call, if you're intending to speak under this item, if you could raise your hand now so we can get an idea of the number of speakers, that would be great. Please raise your hand on the Zoom call if you are intending to speak under this item. Okay, we have 15 in-person speakers, and we have 6 hands raised on the Zoom call. So 21.
And under our guidelines?
I'm sorry? Our guidelines are less than 10, we do 3 minutes. Between 11 and 20, we do 2 minutes, and more than 20, we do 1 minute, usually.
How does the council feel about the time allotted in this circumstance? How does the council feel about the time allotted, given our circumstances? Wait.
I would say that given it's slightly over 20, I would say 2 minutes because it's a serious thing.
I would agree.
Okay, the timing will be for 2 minutes each. I'm going to call up the in-person speakers first. On the Zoom call, these are the names who will be called, and at this point, we are not taking additional hands raised. So on the Zoom call, it's Michelle Brown, Karen Moan, Sandy Blackman, Stu Bruins, Rick Sakuda, Doug Wright, and Danielle Quirko-Gadicki is going to be our last speaker on the Zoom call. So right now, in person, please call up, and I'm going to call up 3 names, if you could line up against this wall so that we can keep you moving pretty well. The first speaker will be Stephen Chiara, followed by Jim, I think it's Hughes, E-N-E-S or E-W-E-S, and then Samir Alamina. If you could, the first speaker is Stephen Chiara.
Good evening, and first off, I wanted to thank the council for your service. I know it's kind of a thankless job, and people normally only show up to meetings to complain. So I sympathize, and now I'm going to complain. So I'm on the board for Mariners Green Association number 3, and there's 3 associations along the east side of the lagoon, and they're contiguous. Mariners Green number 1, number 2, number 3, and then Harbor Town. And I've lived on the lagoon for going on 30 years, and I've always admired how the city has handled the lagoon. I've never seen a flood. As far as deviation in water height, you know, the most I've maybe seen is 6 or 8 inches, and Saturday was a complete aberration. And I did see an email coming out from Public Works saying that, you know, this was basically the fault of the storm. But the storm's job is to be a storm. It did its job, and Public Works' job is to anticipate the storm. And I suspect there may, you know, with turnover in the city, there may be a gap in institutional knowledge about the operations of the lagoon that allowed this to occur. But basically, we had neighbors noticing the lagoon rise at 7:30 in the morning and start making calls, and they were effectively rebuffed. We went down and checked the pumps at about 8:30, and later on we found that there were 2 pumps out of the 6 running, and perhaps maybe running at 50%. And we were raising the alarm bells that this was going to lead to a problem, and indeed it did. All our fixed docks were a foot underwater. We spent, our neighborhood was plunged into darkness with no power until 4 this morning. I spoke to PG&E, and they told me it was, the workers there, that it was a direct result of the flooding that happened because the lagoon wasn't effectively lowered in time. And, I would like this to end up being a positive event going forward, where the city actually recognizes the importance of the lagoon citywide and how everything backs up if the lagoon gets impacted, and would hope that it allows us to repair and mend and strengthen our relationship with Public Works.
Thank you. I apologize, I used the wrong timer. Our next speaker is Jim Ennis, followed by Samir Alamia, and then Michael Ekoff.
Good evening, Mayor Lee, council members. Thank you for the opportunity. I want to piggyback a little on what Steve Chiari just said. I saw the water rising. I live on the water, and in the past several years, I've noticed that the management of the water levels have been more reactive than proactive. I went out to the pump station at about 8:30, and there was a worker out there, and 2 of the pumps were running. And I asked the guy, pleaded with him, can you turn on the pumps? We need more water to be pumped out. The pumps were only running about 20%, because you can tell by the wastegates. Nothing happened. The event happened, and I think it caused a chain reaction through the city, quite honestly. And I would really like the council members and Department of Public Works to put more effort into monitoring the water levels, because we have a 14-day storm happening, and I'm afraid that all this is going to happen again. And I know the water level is lower than normal, but in the future, I think the procedures and protocols need to be re-examined to make sure that we're out in front of these things instead of reactionary. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Samir Alamia, followed by Michael Ekoff, and then Roxanne Sire.
Good evening, honorable council members. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me this evening. My name is Samir Al-Jamea. I'm here tonight to address an unresolved issue with Laurel Creek. My wife and I and 2 younger children live with me on Laurelwood Drive. We have lived at a residence for a little over 5 years now. Our home backs up to Laurel Creek and is parallel to the creek, exiting underneath Laurelwood Drive. On December 31st at approximately 6:30 a.m., my 5-year-old son calmly said, "Daddy, why is the creek in our backyard?" To save the honorable council member's time, our home was flooded with almost 6 feet of water filling my crawl space and my entire backyard not to be seen. For the better part of 6 hours, my friends and I did the best we could, waist deep in water, pumping water out from underneath my home. My wife and kids and I packed up everything we could to exit the home and bring them to safety. 6 hours later, the creek had receded. 2 hours later, the creek had raised almost 10 feet in 2 hours. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if it's dam control or what have you. I'm proposing something to be done with Laurel Creek, specifically to all residents whom reside in these danger zones. I'm proposing that the tunnel drains under the streets be attended to, as they are nowhere near the size they should be to properly drain this creek. This creek turned into a river in 4 hours' time. I'm proposing that all sinkholes where these water outlets run under the streets be properly filled. I'm proposing that all residents on Laurel Creek be made a priority. We have numerous neighbors whom are frightened for their lives and losing their homes, including myself and my family. Unfortunately, 1,000 sandbags won't do anything for my home. Honorable Council, I appreciate your time, and I sincerely hope something is done to resolve this issue. I am just one victim, one family, one residence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Michael Ecoff, followed by Roxanne Sire, and then Rich Kranz.
Good evening, council members. My name is Michael Ecoff. I reside on Mariners Island on Starboard Drive. I've been on the island and resident part of this community for over 15 years. I'm an owner and a tax-paying citizen. I canceled my vacation early to rush home when I first noticed the waters were rising and when my neighbors were reaching out to me, affected by the recent flooding. I appreciate Mr. Colbert's presentation on upcoming storm preparation, but as they say, a day late and a dollar short. Unfortunately, this is going to cost residents much more than $1, including myself. This appears to be an abject failure and mismanagement on the part of the city and the city officials who are involved in this response. Required to keep the community safe from flooding. However, I will reserve judgment until the facts are presented. I think the residents of the affected communities deserve transparency and understanding of what happened here. I've seen emails so far that seem to really cover people's positions rather than explaining the facts of the matter. We deserve that and what happened and why. There will likely be tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in property damage that have occurred. Some of my particular questions are as follows. Who was in charge of the flood response of Seal Slough? What was the protocol? When was the water table? Why was the water table not drawn down prior to the events? Which all meteorology, you can turn on Fox News, you knew the event was coming. You knew the amount of water that was coming, it was predicted. Why was there a delay in engaging the pumps? What will be done to understand what happened? Who will lead this effort? How will transparency be addressed? And ultimately, what will be the operational changes and plan necessary to ensure that this is not repeated? And that future flooding events are addressed. This was an entirely preventable event and needs to be addressed sufficiently to build community confidence in our elected and appointed officials. I'm asking you to take real action and address this issue sufficiently.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Roxanne Sire, followed by Rich Kranz, and then Charlene Kranz.
Thank you, City Council. No rational person can argue that the San Mateo Public Works Department is capable of doing their job. You need to immediately fire all employees involved in the decision not to lower the lagoon. The Public Works Department is a public service job, which means they must actually interact with the public. There is absolutely no excuse for referring us to the police. The first time I called the police, they told me it was high tide, so the pumps wouldn't work. It was actually almost low tide. The police are even less knowledgeable about the lagoon than the Public Works Department. The second time I called the police, they were extremely condescending. So we have two public service departments, the police and the Public Works Department, neither of which see their job as a public service. We are extremely lucky to have residents who are interested in keeping our lagoons safe, but our Public Works Department doesn't realize how lucky they are to have residents to assist them. Public Works needs to be replaced with people capable of making rational decisions and working together with the public to keep us safe.
Thank you very much.
No, excuse me. We don't applaud, cheer, jeer. It has a chilling effect on anyone's comments, so I'm going to ask you not to do that, please. Go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, council members, thanks for listening to us. This is pretty serious. 32 years, resident on Shoal Drive, volunteer to the city with cleanups and stuff. In the past, we had access to the DPW people who ran the pumps, not because we want to control you guys, because we want to help. It's like calling the fire department. I see smoke, I see a fire. Your decision. That's been snipped. We don't have any access to the city anymore, which is, can't say that word. It's nonsense. Without a point of contact, I called the same thing, called the police department at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they said, I don't know how should I know? That's nonsense. Went to the pump station, 2 pumps were running. I'm sorry, I'm getting pissed. The day started out with a normal 94.9 winter level. It's not normal. This is an abnormal condition. Why is the water so high? Tried calling around, no response. Called Rick Sakuda over at the Marina Lagoon Action Committee. He has no point of contact. It wasn't drawn down to the maintenance line. Even tonight, as we speak, right now, you're leaving 10 inches of water on the table. I've been doing my dock maintenance for years. I know where the maintenance level for winter, the dotted line is, and it's up here. Stuck a ruler, you got about 10 inches of water. That could be to your advantage for tomorrow morning. This is super important, and you're blowing it. My house is not ruined, it didn't float away, but I have severe damage on the first floor. I had a 1965 Hammond organ my wife and I rebuilt. It's ruined. It's full of salt water. We used to have phone access, don't have it anymore. The rain event was actually it wasn't a storm of the century, it was predictable. What got you guys was the high tide. When the sun and the moon aligned, you got a tide that came over the top and no pumps. Pushing against the bay can evacuate the water out of the system. That's why you need a head start. It's also probably why you need to dredge the lagoon. Not because we want to water ski in deeper water, it's so they don't get my house ruined. Thank you, folks. We need your help.
Thank you for being here.
You betcha.
Next speaker is Charlene Kranz, followed by Marina Godfrey, and then Hamed Ahmadi.
Good evening, Charlene Kranz, married to Rich. Thank you for listening. It was a very emotional day for us. These events are predictable. More attention needs to be paid. I would echo the comments of my neighbors that we can prevent this from happening in the future. And I will sleep a lot better at night knowing that steps are being taken to make sure that we're collecting all the information that we can so that we can stop these flood events from happening, since this is essentially the first time that this has happened in this neighborhood. And I don't think it needs to happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mariva Godfrey, followed by Ahmad Ahmadi, and then Bob Horth.
Good evening, and thank you again for actually opening this up and adding it to the agenda, because it is important and is very timely. I want to especially thank Rich Hedges. On December 31st, he was in touch with us in Laguna Vista all day long until the waters receded. And I want to thank Lisa Diaz-Nash for responding to my letter very, very quickly, as soon as she read it, and in her desire to come and visit and see things firsthand. Do they have the pictures yet? So I know that you've got these in the email, but I just thought I'd blow it up a little bit bigger so that you can see the situation at hand, which people are speaking to. What I want, the residents of San Mateo are the eyes and ears to City Council. There is no way that any of you could possibly know what's going on in every corner of, of our city. However, I do agree that we need to have lines of communication wide open, especially in an event of an emergency. So I'm here to be that eyes and ears, and I am representing the 101 units on Laguna Vista and the, what we call ourselves Laguna Vista HOA Marina Lagoon Committee. So what happened at our end, which is the south end where the tidal gates are, is that without adjusted precautionary measures in operating the pumps in a timely way, especially given that this was a predicted event, Marina Lagoon, at its most southern end, for the very first time ever, actually flooded and breached the banks. It was only retained by Highway 101 wall. This is the first time. I've checked with people that have lived in the community far longer than I, and they have never seen this happen. 2014's weather storm was much, much severe than this, and it didn't happen then.
Thank you, Mareva.
So please come and visit, okay? and be aware, and the adjustments need to happen with this new knowledge that the south end has failed as a retention capacity basin.
Thank you, Mareva.
Thank you, Hamed Ahmadi, followed by Bob Horth, and then David Koch.
Good evening, council members, and a happy new year. I just want to give you a bit of a picture of what my house looked like. I've been living in Shoal Drive for a while. In the morning when my neighbors called me and asked for me to come down and actually haul over a big piece of deck that came from one of our neighbors that was against our deck, I didn't believe it. I said, there's no way that the water is that high. When I went down, a third of my downstairs garage was under the water. And imagine this is on a slope going up. And the water reached all the way back to my garage, the under storage garage. It took me 5 hours to shovel dirt and debris out of my childhood items, our pictures, our clothing, everything is ruined. I have now all bags of garbage that I need to put out. This is not acceptable. In this age and day of communication, social media, all these sorts of ability to communicate and talk to people, my mind is blown that we cannot reach out a responsible person, or they cannot reach us and give us warning or say something that we can take action, and we have the dialogue. We're living in the city together, and we need to take an action to make the living together a more pleasant matter. I am requesting that we establish some credible and viable and on-time, real-time communication so that we can guarantee the safety both on the human lives and also on the properties. Now we have to pay a lot of damage for the properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Bob Horth, followed by David Koch, and then Sherman.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Bob Hortop. I want to start by thanking the city staff who got out there and worked the last few days. The lagoon wasn't the only area that flooded, as you're well aware. There were a lot of floods, and people did hard work, and they did it on all the unavoidable areas very effectively, and it's a tough job, so I thank them. I want to address the avoidable area. The Marina Lagoon was built to be a storm basin. It was built for a storm like this. I think the council should address the decisions made by a few of the individuals starting the past few days about how they handled using this very valuable tool, the Marina Lagoon, to protect against the storms. Thursday morning, December 29th, on TV and radio stations, the weather reports were warning of what they described as an atmospheric river coming. KRON-TV advised preparing in the low-lying areas with sandbags. That was Thursday morning. The lagoon could have been drawn down all day Thursday and had plenty of capacity for what was about to come. It's been handled before, as was recognized earlier. There's no question this was mishandled. This atmospheric river was expected to arrive Friday, and it did, and last through Saturday, and it did. Why wasn't the lagoon drawn down to the standard dock maintenance level, that's the lowest level of the year, on Saturday, well before Saturday the 31st? We paid a lot of money as a community. The federal government helped, the Army Corps of Engineers. This has been a big project for years, and it's worked beautifully. I've been on the lagoon for 35 years. It's worked beautifully. The reason it didn't work was not because the lagoon isn't well designed, it was poorly managed. That's the failure here. So I just want to draw that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is David Koch, followed by Sherman, and then Keith Carlson.
Hello, my name is David Koch. I'm a 45-year-plus resident of the Fortunate on the Marina Lagoon, and I can assure you I've never seen the water level in the lagoon anywhere near as high as it was during the problem this week. I suggest there's 3 areas that could be concentrated on. some immediately, which the immediate problem would be if this is an actual emergency declared by the city, I hope in the next 12, 14 hours or whatever, there's appropriate action, maybe a emergency operations center that's opened up. And if I was managing this problem, I think I'd be standing out the rest of the day tomorrow at those pumps, watching and measuring what is going on and what how it can be mitigated. The second suggestion would be is to look at what happened the last few days to actually see where the downfall was in the planning or implementation of whatever the program was. And third, like several have mentioned, is the lagoon itself is in need of dredging. And that's the long-term problem that is going to, this is a storage basin out there, and if there's nothing to store, no room to store anything, the margin of error for the pumps gets smaller and smaller. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Sherman, followed by Keith Carlson, and then Amy Jessel Bedard.
Hi, thank you, City Council, for taking the open public and adding this agenda for sure. I'm on Laguna, Marina Lagoon on Shoal as well, and I was on vacation up in the mountains when my wonderful neighbors on Shoal, all of them, they just are freaking out and saying the water level is rising. And I was like, no way, I've been here 20 years, the pumps will go, everything will go on, it'll be fine. But echo everything they said, but just a little history. I work in safety and quality in the hospital, and it starts back with the whole complex as I'm reading emails and stuff with the fact that back in the airlines when the airline pilot, he was in control all the time. And when they did the study of all the accidents and stuff is because no one would question him. Same thing in hospitals and surgeries. The surgeon was the god. It was just like a god complex. Even if we saw that there was something wrong, we wouldn't question the surgeon. We wouldn't question the airline pilot. That has changed. That's decades ago. And quality and safety now is we work as a team. We listen to each other. We do not cut off communication. Everyone has a point. And what saddened me is that the emails pointed out that this could have been preventable, but people weren't listening in the city managers and everything to get the pump. It was just pushed off. And implore you guys to open that communication. Let's not go back to the days where we don't get questioned because we're doing this and we know what we're doing. We're here to help. We're here to point out things. We're here to be eyes, and we can't shut that down. The communication cannot shut down. That's where so many things fail. So we'll go there. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Keith Carlson, followed by Amy Jessel Bedard, and then last speaker in person is Kevin Simpson.
Thank you to the council. My name is Keith Carlson, and I'm super grateful to be here with you and also with so many really impassioned residents of San Mateo, many of which you've heard 15, 20, 30 years. I myself have been here for 30 years with my family. I'm an engineer. I'm a CEO in the tech industry. I raised my family here, and I love San Mateo. I certainly love the lagoon as well when it behaves nicely and when the weather behaves nicely. Unfortunately, we had a whole series of catastrophic events a few days ago, and I and my neighbors were the recipient of it. So in the morning, the water reached summer level. I started getting concerned, which in the past I've called my network. My network is Rick Sakuda and the Marina Lagoon Action Committee and others, and said, folks, and I went down to the pump. I live very close to there. There was one pump working at that time. And I said, folks, we got to get going. And they said, oh, well, our communication has been stifled these days. We don't no longer have the transparency we used to have with Public Works. Call the police department. I called the police department. They said, well, we're going to put you over to Public Works, where I left a voicemail. At any rate, I called the police several other times that day, and the fire department and Public Works, and left email. By late morning, it was still raining. By early afternoon, all the pumps were running, and the water was breaching my deck, breached my sandbags, and flooded my lower story of my house. In my opinion, we got lucky. The rain stopped at about 3 p.m. The water lagoon the pump started catching up, and the water lagoon started stabilizing. Had we not gotten lucky and it continued to rain, I am shuddering to think of what could have happened. The water was rising, in my opinion, at a rate of about a foot an hour. Imagine if at another 2 or 3 or 4 feet. Wouldn't just be a few citizens here. This room would be packed, and we'd have the better part of San Mateo probably underwater, and a national newsworthy event. Thankfully, that didn't happen. Please help us to prevent it from happening again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy Jessel Bedard, followed by Kevin Simpson.
Hi, Council. I'm a 40-year resident. I've been here since college. I love the Marina Lagoon. I literally bought in a condo and then traded up in a townhome. So I've been here a long, long time. This is not a Marina Lagoon issue. This is a thing I want to emphasize here. This is a citywide issue. This is something that the dredging and the stormwater runoff needs to be looked at in a much bigger way. Not with excuses, not with blame games and all that, but with funding, with strategic acumen and listening, most of all, listening to the constituents. I don't feel our constituency has been listened to at all by the former council. I'm thrilled that we have a new council. I hope things are going to be more transparent. But so far, it doesn't look that way. I have a very strange story with the flooding, and that is I am one of the few that did not fully flood out on Mariners Island. Let me tell you why. It's because I didn't trust the city. I trust the Marina Lagoon Action Committee. That's who I go to. That's the person, Rick Sakuda and that crew. They know what's going on. When I looked at the flood waters rising, I texted Rick and said, "What's up?" I went to the pump station. I saw the same thing everybody else has reported, and I started barricading the house. I built a 2-foot thing like MacGyver on all sides, and I still got flooded out in the boathouse and in one lower level, but I was able to save the rest of my house. Sadly, most of my neighbors did not. I would also like to talk about the FEMA flood zone resurgence after decades, because I think we're all gonna come through this, where next thing you know, FEMA's gonna be knocking at our door saying, "You said it didn't flood." It flooded. That's on you. That is on this city. This city, I fought for decades to get our rates lowered. And yeah, to Rich Krantz's thing, I'm ticked, because now we're gonna go through this all again. I've been battling for rate reductions, and now we're gonna be stuck with it again. So this is the gift that keeps on giving. Thanks so much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Kevin Simpson. Thank you.
Hello, Council. Thanks for giving us this time to address you on this. I had originally planned to come here to talk about another issue. I live in North Central, and I came to talk about traffic safety after another horrific accident half a block from my house on Humboldt Street. But obviously, bigger ticket items are on our minds. I'm probably an odd person to be standing up here. My home is warm and dry, and I'm not walking through the remains of raw sewage or water damage or shoveling all of the fine art my husband and I have collected into the trash. But I'm here because I'm hurting for my fellow citizens, and I want to make sure that they're heard and that this is taken seriously, and I want to make sure they know that the rest of the city also has their backs. And we will be here to hold the city accountable for a better response, better communication by far, and more clarity about what the plans are. I grew up in the Midwest, and when a big storm used to come, and I can remember one when I was just 15 or 16 that had us out of school for 2 weeks. The counties, even back then, opened emergency operation centers before the event happened. They declared a state of emergency before, and perhaps City Manager Corbett did that, but it wasn't really clear to residents what was happening. We didn't hear much. We didn't know who to communicate to when things were going wrong. I was walking down to San Mateo Creek multiple times a day to check the level of the water there and see where it flows under Fremont Street, whether it was going to breach that and potentially flood out my neighbors' homes. We got lucky there. I just want to say that we need to hear more about what happened. We need to hear more about how it's not going to happen again, and we need to do better. And my fellow citizens, I'm very sorry what happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, moving to the remote lines now, we have 8 speakers: Michelle Brown, Karen Moen, Stu Bruins, Rick Sakuda, Doug Wright, Danielle Swerko, Melissa, and Carrie Kumar. Carrie Kumar will be our last speaker on this item. So if I could go ahead and Michelle Brown, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself.
Unmute? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and thank you for adding this to the agenda. I am a resident of Harbortown, and I am on the board of directors for the Harbortown HOA. I'm here to tell you that I'm really dismayed at the lack of preparedness that was displayed when we had these torrential rains. I was here when FEMA came out and decided that we were all going to be under FEMA, and we worked very hard to get out from under FEMA. We have special taxes that we pay here in Harbortown to help you build the structures that we needed to handle flooding. And the dismay I'm displaying or talking about is also that same dismay that has been talked about by all the people here. We have the capability of taking care of it. We just didn't use it. The lagoon needs to be dredged. It's not deep enough to handle water that rises, 5 feet in 2 hours. So I'm hoping that now that we have a plan in place, that we're not reactive, that we're proactive. It's really critical that we take care of our properties and our homes, and that we listen to one another, and that we have the capability of communication to our representatives and to the people who will help with these plans. So I'm hoping that this won't happen again. I'm hoping that everything will be taken care of, and tomorrow is going to be another one, so let's not let it happen again, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Karen Moen. Please go ahead, Karen.
Yes, I too have lived in Harbortown for 34 years and have never seen anything close to this. I had noticed before the storms that it appeared that the water was at heights that we don't normally see this time of year, but have always felt assured, being told that the pumps up by 3rd Avenue can handle draining the lagoon quickly, even in severe storms. And there have been 1 or 2 severe storms during the time that I've lived here, where the water, you can visibly see the water flowing towards the area where it will be discharged into the bay. The management of this incident was horrible, and we need to make sure that this doesn't happen again. There is absolutely no reason that the police are being called when it's a public works issue, and it is not right that the public is being ignored when we say that there is a problem. I would like to suggest that the council schedule an immediate study session to look at the poor management of the lagoon, to look at reactivating the Marina Lagoon Advisory Committee to provide contact for those of us that live along the lagoon, but all of those areas that discharge into the lagoon area. We know what the problems are, but you have to have the political will to fix them. And as a resident concerned about FEMA, about insurance rates, about flooding in my own home, you have to do better. And I hope that you're prepared to do better this weekend, because quite frankly, we will be very, very unhappy should, and you will have rooms full of people should you not do a better job this coming weekend.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Stu Bruins. Please go ahead.
Yes, I was not personally affected by this, but I was appalled by the fact that an email came out from the Director of Public Works talking about 5 pumps running, when I could see on Nextdoor that people were saying at best it was 2. I would like the city to prepare a report on this that names names and talks about staffing levels for holidays, and hopefully we won't have a repeat of this. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rick Sakuda. Please go ahead, Rick. Rick, you can unmute yourself. Rick, we'll come back to you in just a moment, okay? The next speaker, let's go to Douglas Wright. Please go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, hi. I want to thank you, Mayor Lee and council members. Pretty much I can't add to anything. Living on the lagoon for 18 years, this is the first time this has ever happened. The biggest thing for me was communication. We contacted the emergency services at 7:30. When we noticed the water up at summer levels, they put us to the fire department. I happened to be walking my dog past the fire truck, and I asked the fire truck about it, and they said, well, sorry, the pumps can't do anything because of the high tide. So obviously the fire department's not the place you want to go. The only comfort we actually found was when we contacted Rick Sakuda, who told us the city was aware, and he kept us informed of everything that was going along the way. But there was at no point where the city actually said, we have control of this. And it just frustrated the heck out of me. At 4 o'clock, when the water was 2, 3, 4 inches above our dock, a foot above our neighbor's dock, that we went to help, and there was no place to go to find out any answers. So for me, the biggest thing is communication. There has to be something in place where the people of the lagoon, the early warning system, can contact or get something handled in regards to the level of the lagoon and the pumps. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker, if we can try Rick Sakuda again.
Hi, I've lost my computer connection, but can you hear me now?
We can.
I'm Rick Sakuda. I represent the Marina Lagoon Action Committee. I'll try to fresh through this as fast as possible. For 30 years...
Hey, Rick, it's a little bit hard to hear you. Can you adjust your microphone a little bit? We really want to hear what you have to say.
Let me try, because I just had a computer glitch here. You want to move on to the next speaker while I work on this?
Yeah, can we call the next speaker?
Okay, yeah, I'll call the
next
speaker. Thank you. Danielle Huerco Gadicki. I hope I said that right.
Yes, hi. 1, 2, 3.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Testing.
can.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, great. I'm Danielle.
I'm sorry, Danielle. Please start over. Sorry about that. You'll have to unmute again.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you. I'm Danielle, and I have been a long-term resident of San Mateo, specifically the Shoreview West area, for close to 30 years. My brother, as well as my mother, live in these neighborhoods as well. I want to start by saying thank you to Lisa Nash and the fire department for their help and quick response to our calls. Our corner of Shoreview and Ocean View flooded, as well as several areas of West Shoreview. There was literally a lake on our corner so high that our neighbor was canoeing. I want to ask the council to conduct an independent investigation into the Public Works Department. We need to have a report done to fully understand what was done prior to the storm and what we can do in the future so the city can be better prepared. I also want to share our personal story and disappointment in the Public Works Department. They drove by our home several times throughout the day with a huge pump truck, saying there's nothing that they can do until the tide goes down. The response of the city was so poor that we as neighbors had to put our own trash cans with cones on top of them in the middle of the road with the fire department driving by saying good work, to stop other drivers from going through the area and creating wake and pushing additional water into our garages and homes which were already flooding. Finally, I want to share that my brother lives on San Miguel Way in the village. All of their homes in that area were also flooded, so bad that they had mud, silt, and sewage, literal sewage in their homes. They've also reached out to the Public Works Department via email, as have I, and we have received no response from the city. This is unacceptable. Unacceptable. You know, my mother is 70 plus years old. She can't be cleaning out sewage from her garage. We need better action and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick, let's try you again now. Rick Sakuda.
I apologize. Is it better?
Okay,
No,
that's worse.
Is my audio still bad?
The audio is bad. Rick, why don't you try calling in using the phone number instead?
Okay, I'll try that then. Thank you very much. I appreciate your indulgence in this.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Melissa. Melissa, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Like Danielle and like Carrie, who's following me, I'd like to speak on behalf of the village people, specifically those on my street, San Miguel. My neighborhood and my street in particular were decimated with floodwater, sewage, silt, covering over 3 feet on New Year's Eve. This has affected all of our garages, our outdoor spaces, our rooms, and our indoor living spaces because of the sewage. Most of us spent the entire weekend, 20 hours total, cleaning these spaces, and they are still not clean and still not safe for our children to go in. In the 4 years that I've lived here, I've never once seen Public Works addressing any of our drains, and even despite the multiple emails, calls, and visits to Public Works and calls to dispatch, not once have they come by to again clean out our gutters. I want to point out also that most of my neighbors cannot be here, although they feel as strongly as I do that there is a flaw in the system that needs to be fixed. My neighbors right now are moving cars to higher land. They are sandbagging. They are looking for sandbags. They are tarping their areas to prepare themselves for what's to come, which is guaranteed to be worse than anything that we experienced. Many people made the point that we need to fix this problem for the future, and I want to know, what are we going to do now to help families who are already stretched paycheck to paycheck to renovate spaces so that our children breathe fresh air, that we have mold mitigation guaranteed to all San Mateo citizens who've been affected by this flood. I am hoping that you as San Mateo City Council will help to advocate for us to receive funds for flood renovation, because this destruction is absolutely unacceptable and unconscionable. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carrie Kumar. Please go ahead, Carrie.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us all today. I live very close to Melissa and Danielle's brother on San Mateo, and unlike the rest of the speakers, we don't have a lagoon view, but we got one this week. We woke up on December 31st to one of the neighbors pounding on our door. At that time, the water level was already up to the bottoms of the cars. And they were going door to door to wake up everyone so that we could move our cars to higher ground. We moved our cars down the street to George Hall's parking lot, so that at least the cars weren't completely ruined. So that was the first round. And once the water level receded, we were able to clean some of that out. All of our garages were flooded in the middle of the block. I would encourage anybody to drive down San Miguel. It looks a little bit like a war zone at the moment. The second time, though, the water rose faster and it rose higher. And every single house from one end of our block to the other, the crawl spaces were flooded. And then now we've got another 2 weeks of rain coming, so everything gets closed back up with sandbags and plastic, and we'll have terrible mold problems going forward. All of our neighbors, wonderful, wonderful people, tried to help each other through this, but there really was not much in terms of the response. So I see a few areas here. I heard a lot about the lagoon. I've only lived here 20 years, didn't realize how much that lagoon was used the way that it is. So wonderful to hear about that. But I really feel like this is probably multi-pronged because I don't live on the lagoon. So upstream from that, there's the storm drains, which I hadn't really seen. A lot of those were clogged up. The creeks, the second round I was told was because the creek flooded here in our area. I don't understand why there's not better emergency notifications. I get a notice when an elderly person or a child goes missing, and it seems like I could have access to that same kind of thing. And appreciate the response from Lisa Nash to our neighbors, and we have forwarded her some pictures of our block. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Phone number ending in 707, is that you, Rick?
Hi there, it's Rick Sakuda. Hey, I apologize for the computer crash I had. Obviously, I'm Rick Sakuda. I'm with the Marina Lagoon Action Committee. For 30 years now, we have had a partnership with the Department of Public Works, whereby we work directly with staff to report on any potential flooding that we might see on the lagoon. So we are essentially the early warning system, or the canary in the mine. We are watching this water because we live on it. We're in it every day. And during rain events, the protocol was that we would call a sequence of phone numbers, and eventually we would make contact where someone could go down to the pump station and turn the pumps on. This was if there was a malfunction. So for 30 years, this system had worked, and there had never been any flooding. There have been 5 near floodings, which we averted with our protocol. This partnership was terminated by Public Works in January of 2022. My last words were, "It's going to flood." Our collaborative efforts have prevented all this damage and could have in this instance. I've sent you emails which details that. Had the pumps come on in time, this wouldn't have happened as well. The pumps were not working in the proper sequence. I designed the sequence whereby each pump would come on as soon as it was determined that the pumps were not able to keep up with the flow. So in that order, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pumps working, and that would have kept the level down. Additionally, the drawing down the level in advance of the storm provides an additional safety margin, but the design of the lagoon is such that it was approved by FEMA and the Regional Water Quality Control Board, Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Fish and Wildlife. The design of the lagoon is such that it can handle up to a 100-year flood. So I believe, well, I'm sure that this could have been averted with the proper communication and protocol. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I'd be happy to speak on this matter if there is another inquiry.
Thank you, Rick. That is our last speaker. We are done with public comment now.
With that, we'll close public comment. I wanted to thank everyone for being here, and for those who spoke, those who weren't able to be here and wrote to us. And what I see and I hear from the community is the strong willingness to be collaborative, to hold us accountable to learning from this experience so that we can do better. I really appreciate the constructive questions that were raised, and all of you, when everything is at stake, our health, our properties, our biggest investments, and even our memories. that we'll never be able to get back, in the memorabilia that was lost. So I know, and I think we all appreciate what is at stake here. We live in this community too. I spent 6 hours digging mud in one of my best friend's houses as well. So I think we all have, I know that council members were responding, they were walking the streets, and we're really trying to get a clear understanding of what has happened. And so this is an opportunity for council to turn some questions to staff and reflect back what happens next. So I'm curious, does anyone want to kick off some questions that we've heard? I particularly would like to raise just a couple of the key areas that to make sure that we're touching on all of the regions that were specifically addressed. I heard from Harbortown, including the lagoon, obviously, and the Laurel Creek, Shoreview West, the Village, Hayward Park, and
19th Avenue
19th Avenue Park. We got a lot of emails about,
and Arroyo Court as well.
Yes, and certainly in North Central as well. So I think it would be really helpful if we could make sure that we're touching on all of the specific regions in the learning. So.
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Sure.
First of all, in being absolutely clear and transparent, I see many friends here tonight. Some of the friends that worked with me and others, like Rick Krantz, Bob Hortop, Rick Sakuda, Amy Jessel, to develop MLAC back in the 90s to make sure that we could communicate with the city for city problems. So to make it clear, I am part of this group, and I don't want anybody on my comments to think when I comment about MLAC, that I'm commenting as an outsider. I will say that for especially the lady or the woman in the Village, this lagoon was dug not to protect Harbortown or Mariners 1, 2, and 3, but to protect the Village, Glendale Village, the area where Bay Meadows is now when it was the racetrack, Las Casitas, not Las Casitas, excuse me, 19th Avenue Park, and Sunnybray. A friend of mine who's long passed now told me before the lagoon was dug, he had water up to his bottom oftentimes in Sunnybray. So part of the problem with this flooding was the height of the lagoon, which in the other areas, the water could not be pushed out through the storm sewers. And with Laurel Creek, that's always been the first to flood before the lagoon was dredged. So saying that, we need to get a stronger level of communication from the community. I think everybody has heard these folks here tonight who are suffering, but they've been very polite and they've not been tremendously demanding. And that comes from how the community east of 101 operates. They're not the ones down here hollering at the city council ever. They come and talk about how things can be fixed. And that's what we're here for tonight, is to fix things. And I have some suggestions, but the first thing I want to know from the city is if we actually go ahead and vote for this resolution, we voted to have it on the agenda, will people be able to apply for assistance through this?
We don't know at this point. It depends on what levels of, if the federal government declares this an emergency and if FEMA makes funds available.
Do you think it would be a good idea to have people start sending to us what their damages are or applying just in case we get some help from the federal government or from the state?
Well, we've been getting some inquiries in the city attorney's offices as well, and there is a claims process that's available. There's claim forms online, and there's individuals can submit those if they wish, to the degree that they feel that there's some damage caused by the city. But that's more in the way of, that has nothing to do with FEMA reimbursement. It's just immediate administrative process to potentially deal with some city reimbursement, but that has its own process to evaluate what actually happened in each individual circumstance. I think you're speaking about much more of a large-scale process for reimbursement, as the city manager indicated.
So I'm aware of 100 homes approximately that were drawn back into FEMA after we got the area out of FEMA. The reason it was given was if people had docks attached to their homes, and I have actually have the PDF from FEMA that shows the roof line where the roofs hung over the water at high water mark. The city worked with FEMA. I was actually involved with the city in being out in the boats trying to figure out what we could do. And FEMA just told Larry Patterson, quite frankly, our rules are our rules. I don't care how fast you can draw the water down. If the roof line is over the water, they're going back in FEMA. So they're difficult to deal with, and I'm really concerned that this is going to have a repercussion. And I talked to a woman named Caroline from Sunnybray today that told me she inquired about flood insurance, and now the base level is $4,500 a year. This will be a tremendous hit to our community, and it's about 30% of San Mateo.
Is that a question about the risk of returning to the?
Yes.
Okay. If we could frame our conversations at this point in the stage in the form of questions before we make statements.
And that's all I have for now, but I will have things.
Okay. Does the city staff have a response or any way to estimate at this point any potential risk of being redrawn into the FEMA map?
We don't at this point. We'll have to evaluate that with FEMA to determine if there are going to be any issues.
Okay. And I think, I think globally, what I hear from community is a need for transparency and better communication, right? And a strong desire to be collaborative with the city. And so it would help, I think, for us to have an understanding to surface how the city is going to internally, respond to the next storms, right? What steps we're specifically taking particularly with the lagoon, right? And what levels we plan to drain it to. And then secondly, what kind of efforts can we do, or what can we expect from from city staff to do a kind of evaluation of the steps that were taken and a learning and integration into a future plan?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to address that. I think specifically to the Marina Lagoon, for tomorrow, we have lowered the lagoon. I know a member of the public indicated that he believes it can be lowered further. We will look into that. I will say right now that, given the events, I will commit to establishing a better and more direct line of communication with the Marina Lagoon. Rick, call me tonight, tomorrow. My number is 650-477-5163. I think that, with the lagoon being such a critical measure of flood control for the city, and the residents on the lagoon being so knowledgeable about the lagoon itself, I think we've got to have that line of communication. It is challenging. I think one of the things that's going to come out of this will be some more formal protocols. And part of those protocols will be who to get in touch with. The concern with always having a single point of contact is if that person's not there, and understanding that when there are issues at the lagoon, there are issues throughout the city that we're also addressing. Again, with that being said, with the lagoon being such a critical function for flood control in the city, we've definitely got to have a close relationship and communication with representatives for the lagoon, and I will commit to doing that. As far as looking at what happened, how did it happen, what was the preparation like? Yeah, anytime there's an event like this, we're going to have to go back and determine, were we as prepared as we could have been? Could we have done some things differently? What went well, what didn't go well? I will say this, and this is not an excuse. We expected an atmospheric river. right? We got more water than we expected. We got more rain than we expected, and it overwhelmed our systems. We need to go back and look at the pump operation in the lagoon. City staff's perspective was that the pumps were operating. I understand that the Marina Lagoon folks do not believe that to be the case. And again, I think part of that is reestablishing better communication with the residents of the area. But we're absolutely going to go back and take a very critical look at this. If we need to bring in a third party to look at certain aspects of it, we will do that. We will be transparent about it. We will get community input. We will bring it to the community. We'll bring it back to City Council and review this at a future date. We're obviously at this point, and I'll let Azalea talk about some of the details I brought up some of the things that we're doing to get prepared. Public Works Director Azalea Mitch has some of the more specific details. But right now our focus is on the next week or so to try to mitigate these storms as best as possible. I think it starts at the lagoon, and we want to make sure that that's in the best shape heading into tomorrow and the next day and the next week. But we do anticipate that the amount of rain that we're going to get is going to create more localized flooding in San Mateo. As some of the speakers brought up, our storm infrastructure is very old. We need to invest in our stormwater infrastructure to make it such that it can handle these wet weather events. I think one of the other things, I don't want to look too far into the future, but I think one of the other things that's going to come out of this in our new protocols is I think we're going to have to be much more conservative. These storms with climate change are more volatile and less predictable if they feel like. And so I think we're going to have to use that and be more conservative as we make decisions on the lagoon and other areas in the city. And so that's where we are now and going forward. I think I'll turn it over to Public Works Director, if that's okay, Mayor Lee, to talk about some of the details about what we're doing for the upcoming storms.
Thank you. So right now we're asking about more immediate term actions. And I think there's still a question that hopefully we can return to about some of the intermediate term action items as well.
Sure. Thank you. I'd just like to note that the parameters for how the Marina Lagoon is controlled have not changed. I know that there were comments about changes in criteria, but those levels have been set for through, I think, Mr. Councilmember Hedges, you have a lot more history in terms of how the operating levels were set, but they have not changed. The levels were drawn down as posted on our website. The pumps are set to stagger based on the rising level. None of that was changed. So the pump station was refueled. These pumps run at full speed. So the speed doesn't change. They run, they're huge diesel engines. And what we are very concerned about is having the fuel capacity to keep those pumps going. So to clarify, the operating criteria have not changed, and we have staff that have worked for the city for decades that are continuing to run this facility. I can share with you that we review the rainfall data daily. We have a wet weather management team that we set up. On Friday, we discussed what needed to be done given the holiday and the fact that the storm was coming during off hours. As our city manager noted, this was a much larger event than anticipated. And to share with you some of the data, the Laurel Creek watershed within an hour saw a 25-year event, within 6 hours a 50-year event, and during the 12 hours of that storm, a 200-year event. This was a very fast-moving system. We were expecting a 2-year storm based on what NOAA had shared, but instead, within the 12 hours, we saw water come down at a rate that put this storm in that watershed at the 200-year. That is unpredictable. The system is not capable of managing water coming down that fast. And I was there in the morning while 5 pumps were operating. And they ran from the morning till the night. We had an operator there spend the night monitoring the facility. These levels were huge. I think as many of the peninsula cities experienced. So what are the next steps? We drew the lagoon down even further. We have oil scheduled to be delivered so that those pumps don't stop, and they'll follow the same level control that we've had established for quite a few years.
So if I could just say one thing, since you addressed me directly. I know that one thing wasn't done. And what wasn't done is an email wasn't sent out saying that the lagoon was going to be drawn down farther from the December 1st level. And when I talked to you on Saturday, you told me it was drawn just to the December 1st level.
It had been drawn to the December 1st level.
So, but the protocol in the past has been when there's a storm coming to draw it down to the level of dock repair. That was not done.
That was not done. It is not part of the protocol. As you can see, we have published, they're on our website, the levels that were established for operation, and those have been followed for quite a few years.
But that's what's always been done in the past. It was not done this time.
No.
And so just to clarify for those of us who are not pump experts, the dock at this point is at dock maintenance level.
Right, which is not our normal winter operating condition, just to clarify.
Okay,
thank you. Not normal.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I think that there's interest and I think legitimate curiosity. Dredging, just to put it out there for everyone who's not familiar, and I'm glad that in some ways there's a silver lining for the entire city to see the really critical importance of the lagoon as an infrastructure asset for the entire city. And so I think that that's a really important message that I hope will carry for many decades, because as we know, the lagoon has been an maintained community asset, and so I think that I heard a question about the lagoon sediment and the delays, the 41+ year delay in dredging the lagoon, and how that might have impacted the holding capacity of this wet weather event. And so, is there a consideration or is there an issue? Hi, Pete. Well, okay. Anyways, so is there, I completely lost my train of thought with Pete there. Right. So I think that there's dredging has been an ongoing issue of concern for the lagoon. I hope that citywide we can now appreciate why this is a really important asset and infrastructure resource that deserves maintenance, that deserves investment. And I think that there's also a question on the table here about what has this lack of maintenance resulted in terms of the holding capacity of the lagoon to really achieve its intended purpose, which is to help level out these water levels, level out the water levels. So, if you don't mind.
Sure. I think this is, an opportunity to reassess the impacts of the sediment accumulation. As some of the speakers noted, we are dealing with climate change and sea level rise. So I think this is an opportunity for us to reassess what is the storage capacity, what do we need to do that is manageable. We have an $80 million dredging challenge, but sea level rise projections are increasing every few years. So I think this is an opportunity for us to reassess how we manage this asset, what improvements are needed for us to, one, improve transparency. One of the things that other municipalities do, you can look at levels online. You can put cameras. Where I live, I can look at the creek online. So there are definitely opportunities that we can do to address real-time information and at the same time reassess what the storage capacity is and also what the impacts of sea level rise are on this lagoon.
Did you have a question? Please go ahead, council member.
The first question is, can we make a commitment that by 10 a.m. tomorrow, we will get back to the Shoreview community as to whether or not we can lower the water even further? It's been suggested by another 10 inches. Can we please get a commitment for that?
We will evaluate. It is based on, how low the pumps can go without actually damaging the pumps. These are huge units. And we do not want to lose the pump.
Understood.
So we will assess. Right now, we are at as low as we ever go, but we will assess if we can go further.
Okay. Two, on 42nd and Pacific, there was significant flooding. The 3 cars were actually completely submerged. I hope that the victim that was pulled from her car is recovering, but I haven't heard otherwise. The question there would be, do we know if that driver went around barricades? She did?
As far as we know, yes, we
Okay.
established the barricades and they went through them.
Is it possible that before tomorrow's event that we have barricades in place for all intersections where flooding happened so that they can be put out by police or even city council people if it comes to it?
Absolutely. We have been meeting nonstop to assess specifically underpasses that, flooding, if that pump station failed and it was submerged very quickly. But we are, that's what we've been meeting for hours in terms of the areas that could likely flood. We're setting up barricades there so that they can be deployed quickly. We're thinking about, having trucks drive around the city with barricades. So that's been in discussions all day today.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, through the mayor, if I could expand on that a little bit. So we are working very diligently to make sure that we can mitigate some of these issues. I just want to point out, right, we're putting we're going to go 24/7 with maintenance over the next several days, which means we're going to split our crews onto 12-hour days. So, and we are going to try to redeploy anyone from other maintenance areas like parks. To the extent they're not addressing issues in parks, they're going to help with some of these things. But the response on Saturday was overwhelming. And so I know someone may look at seeing a city truck driving past where they are and going somewhere else. We're triaging and trying to get to the most high priority, largest impact things. And I know that's no solace to folks who did not feel like they were served properly. But dispatch received 1,300 calls on Saturday. Most of them were related to flooding. We were getting to the highest priority things that we could get to. And so we will continue to do that. I think we're better positioned and better mobilized as we head into tomorrow, but I just wanted to make sure that was said.
Absolutely. And we appreciate all the hard work from the Public Works. I certainly don't mean to diminish those efforts at all. But to my point, having barricades and things in place so that anyone could put them out, whether it be the fire, the police, or, like I said, any city employee, I think is very key. There's obviously been a change in the past year with the Marina Laguna Action Committee. I hear you giving Rick your number. I'm sure he appreciates that. I just want to make sure that we after this, as a postmortem, make sure that we go and figure out how to rebuild and replace and put back that communication, because I've lived in my neighborhood now for 22 years, and we've never had flooding in Sunnybrae. And I honestly believe when I look at where all the flooding was in District 3, it's all backing onto Leslie Creek, Burrell Creek, and Laurel Creek, which all flood directly into the lagoon. So ultimately, if the lagoon level had been down, I think a lot of this could have possibly been, I won't say it's not, there wouldn't have been still flooding, but there would be less of flooding. So I'd just like to encourage us to make sure that we take that as an action item to reestablish that relationship with the Marina Laguna Action Committee.
Yes, again, through the mayor, council, you have my commitment that will occur.
Okay, and then the last thing, which is I guess more of a statement than a question, is I'd like to make sure that after all this is done, that we revisit the maintenance and the dredging schedule for the lagoon. I'm told when I talked to a lot of people this past weekend that, there used to be funds that were supposed to have been put aside for dredging the lagoon, and now it seems as though that's something that maybe hasn't been maintained in quite some time. So I'd like to make sure as an action item that we are figuring out how to make sure that we have a schedule and funding for that.
We have, for the past few years, we have been working on a stormwater fee. Some of you may have received a survey on this last year. We are coming back to council. There is no funding to dredge the lagoon. There is no funding for the capital needs. It is a challenge. We are looking for a dedicated funding source for our storm drain system. And that's something that we will bring to council back this spring.
And I'm sure that Rick and I would volunteer, Mareva will be willing to offer a personal tour to any council member who would like to attend and learn more about the lagoon. And I'm sure that Azalea could also bring everyone up to speed in terms of where we are and the steps that have been taken from previous council priority, which it actually did make it to our council priority list this last year I think it was 3 years ago now. We finally got it on a council priority list, and to study dredging the lagoon and surveying outreach and ways looking at feasibility for the resources.
Thank you.
So does anyone have any other questions about immediate actions?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Lee. To try not to replicate what everyone said, and thank you very much to everyone for the comment, for sending the emails, for reaching out to all of us. As everyone said, you are the eyes and ears of the city, no matter where you are. We all are in this together. I would love to focus on the near-term communication that we talked about, repairing relationships with Marina Lagoon. We talk about barriers, all these short-term things. But I heard a tremendous amount of frustration with, I can't talk to anybody. I can't get anything. And so if it's a question I also hear, we got 1,300 calls to the dispatch, which is, there's only so much human beings can do. Is there anything from a technology perspective, from a neighborhood circle perspective?
Can I interrupt and frame that question a little bit? So I think to specifically it would be helpful to talk about how communication will change when we stand up the EOC. And I think in the long term, one of my council priorities is going to be, and we can discuss how we can upgrade our constituent services communication systems, looking at things like the 311 applications that have been implemented in Boston, in San Francisco, in San Diego, where it's geo-optimized. You have tickets. If you put in a request, that you've received a confirmation that it's been received. It's 24/7. So I think that is a longer-term priority that's not going to happen in the next 24 hours. So how is communication going to be improved in the next 24 hours?
I agree completely.
So 48, 72 hours, let's say.
Yeah, so with, first we have the EOC that will activate tomorrow morning, so we will have 24-hour operations. We will have a communications person there, so we will all be centralized, so it'll be easier to talk to one another and not playing phone tag, and so we'll be able to push communications out, I think, a little more quickly, a little more effectively, in order to try to offload some of the call volume on the dispatch. Public Works is also going to have folks answering phones 24 hours. And again, it's a limited number of people, but we're going to try to help triage some of the calls with additional Public Works resources that usually do not work off hours. And I believe we're also working on trying to stand up some sort of web form that people can send something in electronically that we can also have staff monitoring. So we can, the big thing there is if it's coming in, it should be easier to triage duplicate requests, excuse me. So 4 different neighbors sending in the same flood request. If it comes in via email, we should be able to quickly address that versus 4 people picking up the phone. So we are working on just enhanced communications for this current operational period in hopes that it will help alleviate some of the frustration that the residents felt trying to report issues.
And can I add on to that you already have some pretty well-developed social media channels. So how can we better use Twitter and...
Oh, our communications manager, Samantha Weigel, would like to speak if she could.
Please, Samantha, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lee and Drew Corbett for giving me a chance to speak. So just to kind of echo what Drew mentioned, we have had staff, both police and myself, working on this, and I agree, our communications, we're going to be improving upon those. I want to note specifically for the flood and clogged storm drain reporting, we have managed to very quickly set up a new online reporting form. We're going to be directing everybody to the website www.cityofsanmateo.org/flood prep. And we'll have an online form there where people can provide reports for us, and that'll help kind of streamline our processes to make sure that our public work crews are also aware of what's going on and hopefully help alleviate a little bit what's been going on with dispatch.
Samantha, could you please repeat that URL?
Yes, it is www.cityofsanmateo.org/FLOD flood prep. I'm sorry, FLOOD flood prep. It is directly available on the homepage of our website as well. We are continuing to utilize all of our available digital channels, including social media, Nextdoor. We'll continue to use Nixle and coordinate with San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department for SMC alerts as well. So we encourage everybody to please make sure that you're signed up for those. And as part of our Emergency Operations Center, we will be opening up a joint information center, pulling in additional resources, and coordinating with our neighboring cities and counties on communications as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Did you have any additional questions?
Yes, thank you very much. We heard a number of people talk about sewage. There is a long-term solution, we know that, but what can we do in the immediate?
I wish I had a better answer. We are in year 9 of the Clean Water Program. The underground flow equalization tank, what is being built at the event center, will be completed late this year. The expansion at the treatment plant will be completed next year. So unfortunately, that means that while we have built a lot of relief sewers, UFIS and the expansion at the plant are key areas because these will give us the storage. So Delaware is our vulnerable point. We had SSO, sanitary sewer overflows throughout the city, and that's why we are under a cease and desist order to address those issues. We have installed Baker tanks on Delaware. We do that every year. However, they were overwhelmed very, very quickly and full, and we cannot empty them until the sewers are low enough. So right now, we are in the process of making sure that our treatment plant treats as much as it can, so that we're ready for the next storm. So we're focusing on getting the levels low enough so that we can handle the inflow and infiltration that is impacting our sanitary sewer system.
And I understand that once we get that big system up in place, that's going to be huge help. But what about all the people who are living with sewage in their living room?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, this was a area saw 50-year event, 200-year event, and it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming to the entire peninsula. UFIS and the expansion, it will be 2 years before those projects are done.
I would encourage the city to work with the county, to work with the state, to see if there's some kind of funding or something available, because just from a pure health perspective, I mean, you understand this. It is just unacceptable that people are having to deal with this, and anything we can do, anybody we can partner with to try and bring some kind of financial or third-party relief would be really immediately valuable. Thank you.
May I say something?
Yes, and San Mateo County Health has issued some protocols and advisory notices that that talk about the contamination of floodwater and the proper ways to do cleanup. So there are resources available on San Mateo County Health website that I would strongly urge people to direct. And I think it would be advantageous to fold that into our communication strategy.
You took the words out of my mouth almost on that. I ran into a young woman at the county this morning that asked me to come by her house. And she lives on Grant, near your house. And so she had quite a bit of sewage in her garage and her laundry room and some carpets that were wet. And the first thing, we need to make sure people understand that if you're in these flood areas, do not wear your shoes in the house because you're just tracking the sewage back in your house. And we also need to make sure people understand. And so these issues that, and I didn't know about that website, thank you. Maybe we need to send a blast out at least to the people that are on our regular communications, what protocols need to be done and to show their neighbors in order to make sure that these sewage spills are cleaned up in their house. We've had some sewer backups, not because of flooding, but because of baby wipes and other things going in the toilets in Harbortown. And they actually have hazmat come out and clean us up. It's a mess. So there are issues of health that we really have to deal with for these people that have been flooded by the sewage. Thank you.
And Councilmember Lorraine, do you have any questions about intermediate steps? We're still on I would like us to still stay on the intermediate steps if we can.
Yeah.
Or sorry, the immediate steps.
Immediate steps.
Yes.
Well, I had maybe a question for clarification first, because we heard a number of public comments about the potential for the tide to influence our ability to act. And I guess I'm wondering if you could maybe speak to that a minute, give us a sense of whether, what influence it does have, if you're aware, and was that part of the issue that we experienced this time? And I guess I'll leave it there, given we're talking about immediate things. I imagine, like, if we're looking into the next few days, is that something that we'll be considering as we consider the lagoon level and so forth?
So I can share that the Marina Lagoon system was built and designed to handle the 100-year storm, considering high tide. So those pumps are designed, right, to be able, the lagoon stores flow, the pumps take it out at rate based on tide. So what we definitely have to do a deep analysis in terms of impacts. Indeed, the tides were high. However, this is a controlled pumping system that is designed to handle. I think the challenge here is, is that this system is designed for a storm that the probability of that occurring is once every 100 years. But we saw watersheds that received what we weren't expecting to see in 200 years. And I think the suggestion of a deep dive and analysis, take a look at, when the pumps came on, how many, like I said, it's a run at full speed. But let me express that this system was overwhelmed. If we're seeing numbers, the Laurel Creek watershed saw a 200-year event. That's surreal. So can we manage this system knowing that we're going to get much more extreme events? What can we do with what we have to minimize the impact? And I think that definitely needs to be part of the assessment.
Thank you. City Manager Corbett, can you give us a sense of whether, as a result of this emergency declaration, there will be any increased access to other sorts of emergency supplies? A number of folks mentioned they would like, I think Councilmember Newsom mentioned it, access to supplies that might help with traffic control or other things. Is that a thing that has typically been offered in emergency situations? Is there anything that we can or should expect?
Our discussions with the county in terms of resources have really been focused on sand and bags so far. We've not talked a lot about different traffic controls. We have, I think, a pretty good inventory. We also have water-filled barricades that we utilized, that we, I believe, still have some at the yard that we think we can creatively deploy. So, I mean, as I can correct me if I'm wrong, my statement would be, I think from a materials perspective, we have what we need for like barricades. It's more of a resource issue in terms of deploying to be able to get them out, even with, we're bringing on, I believe we're gonna have our parking enforcement contractor shift to traffic control, and we're not gonna be doing enforcement. So it's just a matter of being able to deploy things and to making sure we're deploying them safely and properly, right? So I think that's it. Zoe, if you have anything to add,
I think the challenge is setting up barricades, in a safely manner. And we have, our police department has offered to help actually install. So we just want to make sure that no one gets hurt by barricading, putting road closures, because people go through them, and that's a safety concern. So it's not materials, it's really having people go out there with the right vehicles, the trucks, the lights, to be able to install the barricades in a safely manner.
Thank you. And could I maybe just ask for sort of like a reminder maybe to us and the public as we are bracing for the rain events coming, what the city would like residents to do in terms of if they see, a blocked drain or something, that's becoming a larger issue that may need attention. Should we call the storm hotline or should we call the non-emergency line?
So one of the challenges in terms of reaching Public Works is we are not dispatch. We have staff during weekdays, during the regular work hours, who are dedicated to answering our phone line. As our city manager, Drew Corbett, just noted, we are actually, as of tomorrow, splitting our shifts and creating a Public Works 24/7 dispatch, which we have never done. So we're actually having staff spend the night at the courtyard so that they can just answer calls. And that is a direct line of communication. And I realized this weekend was very frustrating. Like, dispatch received 1,300 calls. It was a weekend, holiday weekend, unfortunately, but we have never deployed a 24/7 dispatch group for Public Works, which is what we will be doing as of tomorrow. And so that hotline will stay activated. It will not roll over to dispatch. And so we will be, residents can reach Public Works directly. The key information that we need, location. Where are these issues so that we can map them? And as Samantha just noted, we actually have a form that will automatically then populate the location, and we can have a map that we can look at. So the form, going to the website, filling our form, calling us directly, and giving us the location will be incredibly helpful.
Thank you. Those are my questions at this time.
And through the mayor, could I ask Director Mitch, what is that telephone number that's going to be the hotline for DPW?
It's a 7300 line.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you very
It's,
much.
And we will be messaging all this, but we won't, anyone who calls that line will be answered by our staff.
At some point.
we're-
I think that, you know, we are going to, the staff, but we're not going to have 50 people answering phones in Public Works, right? We just don't have the staff for that. I would encourage people to utilize the web form to the best of their ability, because we will have people in the EOC that are not directly answering phones, but can be looking through emails and web forms, and again, triaging and trying to bundle things that are service requests for the same thing.
Great. And so I participated in the flood emergency briefing for electeds today at noon, and one of the communication tools that our county manager, Mike Calgi, was suggesting that we implement is the My Zone system. And so will we be actually updating our emergency information into that system? Is the plan to, is to centralize it so that countywide we're tracking and geo-tracking all of the flood events?
Yeah, I'll need to, I'm aware of the Zone Haven and the request to utilize it. I believe that my understanding is that police and fire personnel were briefed on it today. We have our own internal GIS tool that we're going to use, but at the EOC briefing tomorrow, I will find out about the use of Zone Haven. I will be encouraging the use of Zone Haven because it will help from a countywide perspective.
Well, it helps with a countywide perspective, and it also helps because it's public facing, right? And so it's not very, it's helpful internally for us to respond to floods, but if we're not actually using that data and turning it back around and giving it to the community so that they can avoid those flooded areas, then, then I think that's a real missed opportunity. And I think that another point that point/question I think that is important to surface is, just how, we have limited resources as a city, right? We have a very lean budget, and we build infrastructure to a certain capacity level. And so I think it's really important to ask the question, given climate change, given this event, where are we in terms of our current capacity and our planned capacity in addressing 200-year events, 100-year events? Because if this becomes the norm, then we are grossly underprepared, right? And so I think that for me surfaces a really important question in terms of how we take the long view and where we look at resource requirements for infrastructure investments. And so I don't want people in this room or those of you left in this room who are on the line to leave thinking tomorrow we got it all covered, because the infrastructure will be operating well and sufficient. And so I think that it's a really important thing for us to take a very realistic view in terms of where we are with our, if we're all operating at peak performance, right, and everything's going smoothly, all the pumps were working as planned, all the, the protocols were followed, and still this event, overcame the capacity of our infrastructure, then, then I think that, is that in fact the case, number one, and I think more analysis is required to really fully understand that and answer that question, appropriately and sufficiently for the, the public's perspective, and then but I think that it's also important just today, leading up to the events, in the next 72 hours, where what can community members expect? In terms of the capacity, what we've learned to date, the capacity that we had, and the ways, what we can expect for levels of control, management, and mitigation. It's just an easy question. I want to hear him first.
Well, so I think, it starts with the lagoon. We've got the lagoon down to the dock maintenance level. We're going to look into whether we can safely drop it any further. We've got the pumps fueled. We've got someone that will be there for the entire event. So I think if we see the same issues with the lagoon in this event, I think it's going to be very telling. I think the point was made. I think Councilmember Newsom made the point. I mean, it starts with managing the lagoon. If we execute to that and we are able to keep the lagoon at levels that will allow its other inflow points to send water into the lagoon, it should mitigate some of the flooding. With that said, even when we get modest rain events in San Mateo, we see localized flooding. And so I think that speaks to, so forget about where the lagoon is in terms of its maintenance. Smaller events create localized flooding. And that is a part of the reason why we need to do, it's not just about the lagoon when we're talking about stormwater maintenance and stormwater infrastructure. It's everything upstream and the lack of capacity there. And so that's why the plan that I think, as I was talking about, it's been to council a couple times. We're doing outreach on sort of the importance of stormwater infrastructure, and part of that message, a big part of that messaging is going to be, it's not just about the lagoon.
Right.
It's about everything upstream from the lagoon that flows into the lagoon. It's all connected. It's all important. So, I mean, I feel like we are prepared as we can be. We are expecting a ton of water over a 12-hour period. And we are going to work as hard as we can to mitigate the issues to the residents and the businesses of San Mateo over that time period.
Councilmember Hedges, did you have a follow-up?
So I really appreciate that, Drew. And I want to say, first of all, I'm not interested going forward in finding anybody at fault. We just have to make sure that we're ready for this. And in saying that, I'd like to see a special study session just on these issues where we visit protocols. For instance, just an example off the top of my head is that make sure that we have a system where all the pumps are checked before storm events start every year, making sure they're clean and operating, because clearly it wasn't true, at least on 42nd Street. And so I think we look at all aspects of this in a study session, find out where we can go from here, and change protocols if it's necessary, expand protocols if it's necessary. And so let's just get to the bottom of this and make sure that that we have a good handle on flooding and we don't have this kind of event in the future.
Yeah.
Because
yes.
It's not going to do any good to start finding blame. We have to find solutions.
Sure, no, I appreciate that. I think, we are going to do a thorough look and investigation into this event and the entire event. I mean, we're going to, get through this rain event and see where we are, and then investigate things and the things like the 42nd Avenue pump station. What happened? Okay, and what caused it to fail, and how could we mitigate that going forward? To your point, maybe it's changing protocols. We've got protocols to maintain our assets. I mean, obviously, it's not in our best interests to not keep our assets in good condition, not keep them maintained. But with that said, we need to figure out what happened, and then how we're going to try to mitigate it going forward. And that will, my suggestion to council is we do the investigation, we look at the protocols, and we bring it all at once to discuss it with council and with the community.
I like that.
Councilmember, did you have a question or comment?
Well, I was also on that EMS county call, and I was going to ask about the zone haven, so thank you for bringing that up. The other thing that they mentioned, which is a very minor point, but the entire city of San Mateo can help by not adding to the sewage and the wastewater during the rain times. And they mentioned this on the county call. That means that, between 3 tomorrow afternoon and whatever time the rain stops, don't use your dishwasher, don't use your washer dryer. Honestly, try not to shower, try not to flush the toilet. If it's yellow, it's mellow, brown, flush it down. But all these things, and it's not, only about a third of the city is affected by the flood, but everybody, 100% of the city can help us by removing and not adding to the water, the sewage and wastewater. So I think we should definitely be messaging that if Samantha Hagel's already not on our website, and encouraging people to help each other out by not adding to sewage outtake.
And we can message that.
You hear that, Samantha? Yellow, keep it mellow.
I'm sure I can try to work that into our communications, but absolutely, thanks for passing that along.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, Councilmember Newsom, for that. That was very helpful. I think that in terms of communication as well, we can make a lot better use of the neighborhoods, the neighborhood associations, to be able to spread messages like that, like the suggestion of not doing things between 3 and 12, or as long as it goes. So I think that's one thing, and I know Samantha has been doing a great job, but we can work with SMUHA and the neighborhood associations to get the word out. And I'd also love to make sure that when we do the postmortem, and we all have different words for it, that there is a real role for community input. Not that what everybody says is going to be what happens, but in order to be able to build the trust and the relationships, we have to be able to open it up. And so as you think about how you want to do that analysis, please, I would ask that we have a very strong community input portion of that. And then it's up to us to get the word out to the community and for the community to participate.
Yes, certainly.
That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Well, I think this has been a really productive conversation. Is there a motion?
And Mayor Lee, is that a motion to adopt the resolution confirming the proclamation of emergency by the city manager?
Yes, would you like to put that up on the screen, or?
I don't think we have a slide for that, but it's in the agenda packet. It's the second resolution in the updated packet that seeks the council adoption of a resolution confirming the proclamation of a local emergency.
Okay.
Do it, Rich.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Hedges?
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom?
Yes.
Councilmember Lorraine?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Diaz-Nash?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. That brings us to agenda item 7, City Council appointments to external agencies and liaison roles, and I'll be facilitating this conversation. So I think everyone on the dais has a printout of the proposed assignments. I hope you've had a chance to review it. I would love to just open it up to conversation to know if anyone wants to horse trade, or if we can move on to just the alternate conversation. So would anyone like to start?
I'm not interested in what anybody else is doing, so.
Okay.
I second that.
I need a longer arm.
We'll get you a pointer. Councilmember Lorraine.
I feel that I am comfortable with what's been assigned to me and do not feel the urge to trade or ask for anything different. Thank you.
Okay.
I too am happy with my assignments and don't have any concerns.
Thumbs up all around. Great. So I think, there's a couple ways that we can talk about alternate assignments. And so if maybe, if you feel strongly that you'd like to be an alternate on a specific on a specific liaison assignment, please, why don't we go through them, and I can make notes to see if there's any folks who have, why don't you start, Councilmember Newsom, if you're ready? Are there any that you feel strongly about?
Can you give me a minute?
Sure. Does anyone have any that they feel strongly about that they'd like to be alternates?
And if I could clarify, we generally have the alternate assignments on the continuity assignment ones. Those are the gray highlighted on there. And then in some cases, we added additional alternates because of a interest from the council on that. Also, the alternate role, the purpose for that is for the continuity commissions is to establish that continuity so someone's ready to go into the role, because it could be more of a heavy lift like a CCAG or something like that. And the other thing is if the appointee cannot make the meeting, we do look to the alternate to attend in their stead.
So, and for the public, the liaison roles are part of the added work of council, that we have assignments to participate in regional boards. So, does anyone have any? Okay, Councilmember
Yes,
Loring.
thank you, City Clerk, for clarifying that. And so with that, I will just note that I would be interested, if it's okay, to potentially be an alternate for Peninsula Clean Energy.
Okay. Does anyone else feel strongly about that?
I feel strongly that he would be a good candidate as an alternate for Pennsylvania.
Sold. Anyone else?
I would like to put myself in as an alternate for CCAG.
Okay. Anyone else feel strongly about that? Okay. Goes to Deputy Mayor Nash. Everyone's getting there first.
I've got 3.
Go for it.
Okay, the Grand Boulevard Task Force actually was an alternate on that from the community once before.
Okay.
I'd be willing to be an alternate.
Anyone object? Great.
Peninsula Traffic Congestion Relief, I'd be an alternate there.
Okay, that's.
In light of what's been happening, the South Bayside Waste Management Authority, maybe.
What number is that one?
13.
13. Okay, Rich.
Did we skip number 13?
Does no, that went to Lorraine. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Excellent.
Madam Mayor, maybe we should go through the gray ones and just figure out if we can assign an alternate to each of them. That might speed this up a little. Just a suggestion.
I was going to do our top level priorities and then
Yeah.
go to gray. Are we good with top level? Okay. I would like to be the alternate for number 9, Consolidated Fire. And let's see, and the DSMA. Well, usually I attend that anyway. Okay, so then let's focus on the gray ones. We have Emergency Services Council. I'll take that one if that's okay. And SF Airport Roundtable.
I'm on it, so.
Okay. Let's give that to our deputy mayor. She hasn't put in the time yet. And we have Planning Commission.
I had put the Planning Commission down as a priority, so I'd be interested in an alternate.
Excellent. You get that one too. Sustainability and infrastructure.
I'd be an alternate in that.
Perfect. Okay. So have we completed the required list?
Those are the ones that were called out specifically for continuity. There are a couple of other ones in the past where we had alternates. I don't know how robustly those were used. Hope had one. The ABAG, which is just the General Assembly, Rick had always gone. I don't know if an alternate was really needed for that. And the San Mateo County Pre-Hospital Emergency Services Group had an alternate. And LPMG had an alternate. And SAMCETA. I don't know if SAMCETA was ever needed. We did need it for LPMG.
Yes.
If SAMCETA's there, I'll be an alternate on that.
Great. So Rich is taking SAMCETA. LPMG?
Sure.
Great.
Is that Adam Lorraine?
Adam Lorraine.
Okay.
What number is that one?
21.
Thank you. And let's see, we had Pre-Hospital Emergency Medical Services Group. Any interest? I would take that one, no problem. If no one else. And then Hope. Number 5. Anyone? Or an alternate?
I would be interested in that.
Great, it's yours. I think that's the list. Okay, I'll share my notes with you, Madam Clerk.
We'll compare.
Hopefully we got everything. Okay, do we need to open up the public comment?
Yes, if you care to have public comment on the council liaison list, please raise your hand or give me a speaker slip. At this point in time, I have no speaker slips, and there are no hands raised.
Closing public comment. Our next item is reports and announcements. Are there any reports? Oh, whoops.
As amended.
Yes, good idea.
I move approval as listed of the San Mateo Council appointments for 2023.
And I will second.
As amended, yes, thank
And
you.
I will second it.
Thank you. Councilmember Hedges?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Diaz-Nash?
Yes.
Councilmember Lorraine?
Yes.
Councilmember Newsome?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, great. All that talk and we didn't even approve it. Okay, lastly, reports and announcements. Does anyone have a report or announcement? No? I have one. I wanted to share my deepest congratulations to our new supervisors, Mueller and Corzo, who were sworn in today. And I was so impressed how they hit the ground running. Noelia Corzo was instrumental in helping our city expand our sandbag stations for distribution to ensure that there was a location east of 101. And I know she worked very closely with our city manager to make that happen. And thank you so much, Drew, for being so collaborative. And so big congratulations to our Board of Supervisors and one of our very own San Mateans.
And I would also like to say that in the mayor's absence, I stood in at a ceremony where Congresswoman Spear had her last press conference and talked about all the money she had brought back to the communities. And with her support, San Mateo is receiving $1.5 million for the restoration of our Marina Branch Library, which is just such a critical resource in our community and was in danger of being shut down without funding. And that matches money that then Assemblymember Mullen had procured for us, plus a grant from the California State Library. So we are giving you a wonderful task, City Manager Corbett, to get the planning going so that we can get the restoration underway. But that was great news.
Excellent.
Very popular library in the city, and actually throughout the county. It houses all the videos, too.
With that, meeting is adjourned.